Good evening and welcome to the January 8th, 2019 meeting of the Merrimack School Board for budget hearings. If you could please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'm going to be better at this evening and let you know that Board Member Schoenfeld is traveling for work and won't be in attendance tonight. She's excused. And in addition, Board Member Brandy Nunez is also has a family commitment and will be unable to attend. So on to item number 3, which is public participation. Anyone from the public who'd like to speak, please come to the microphone at the end of the table, hit the button to make sure the green light is lit, and say your name and address for the record. You have to make sure the button is illuminated. Is it lit? You can tell the difference when you hit.
Push. Oh, there you go. I see. I got you. Okay, sorry about that.
And behind the curtain, tapped out.
Richard Foote, 129 Indian Rock Road in Merrimack, of course. I was here last night for the meeting, and I was having a little difficult time following everything, as the numbers and everything are going on. Is it possible to get a copy of something that lists, the numbers and everything?
Mr. Foote, on our website, we do have everything in this book. It's actually posted by department.
Super, okay.
So, yeah, you can look at it as we see it.
Okay, super, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. If there's anyone else that would like to speak under public participation. Seeing none, I will close public participation. We will go on to item number 4, which is our budget presentations. We're going to start with our elementary schools. So I invite to the table leadership from James Mastrocola Elementary School, Reeds Ferry Elementary School, and Thornton Ferry Elementary School. And I will let you introduce the team.
Good evening, everyone. This is nice and cozy this year. My name is Bridie Bellemare. I'm the principal of Thornton's Ferry Elementary School. I'd like to introduce you to members of the district elementary team. To my right is the assistant principal, Julie DeLuca of Thornton's Ferry. To her right is Michelle Romaine, principal of Mastrocola Elementary, and her assistant, Alicia Hansen-Prue. To my left, my colleague, Kimberly Yarlott, principal of Reeds Ferry School, and her assistant, Rachel Schneider. So this evening, on behalf of my colleagues, I'll be providing an overview of the proposed 2019-2020 elementary school budgets. And as in years past, the elementary budget proposals shared with you this evening continue to reinforce the priorities aligned in the Merrimack School District Logic Model, intending to ensure progress in the areas of literacy, numeracy, technology, and school climate. The 3 elementary school administrators worked closely with one another and the assistants to establish collective priorities representing fiscally responsible budgets as evidenced by the decrease in the bottom line across all 3 schools. We would like to thank members of the board for their thorough analysis of our budgets in advance of this evening's presentation. We have been in receipt of several questions from the board and would like to begin by restating these questions for the public, then to provide answers to those questions. Lastly, we are happy to field any final questions from the board regarding our responses to the questions posed. We'd like to begin with the questions received from Chairperson Barnes. The first question posed was relative to guidance text account, and it read as follows. Will this account be recurring at this rate, or will there be lesser expenses in subsequent years, knowing we are establishing the program contents in 2019-2020? Our response to Chairperson Barnes's question was that the majority of these expenses listed in the elementary guidance text account are startup costs associated with the purchase of the new social and emotional learning program materials for each classroom, grades K-5. In subsequent years, there may be ongoing nominal expenses to purchase additional materials. The second question posed from Chairperson Barnes was addressing field trips. The question read as follows: what out-of-pocket costs do students have for these outings? Are there funds available for those receiving free and reduced lunch? Are those on free and reduced lunch expected to bring lunch from home? Our response: the entrance fee for field trips ranges from $0 to $14.50, depending upon the distance traveled and the number of buses required. The information relative to students receiving free and reduced lunch is confidential and therefore unknown to us. This data is collected through the District Food Service program. The schools do not have a line item to assist students who receive free and reduced lunch costs. However, regardless of financial ability, we ensure that all students attend field trips. Our universal practice during the school day is if we are aware of any student who does not have a lunch will always be provided to that student. Question number 3 from Chairperson Barnes: knowing we just rolled out a new math curriculum, are the expenses in the text account truly for textbooks such as unreturned or damaged, or are they for disposable materials that could also be accounted for in supply accounts? Master Cola shows a refresh rate of 50% of last year's rate on math text. Reed's Ferry School was 18%, and Thornton's Ferry was at 35% based on prior year's budget expenditures. Our response to this question is that part of the implementation of the Envisions program was the purchasing of intervention and extension resources. These resources consist of 2 components which are purchased separately and have varying costs. Master Cola Elementary School purchased 1 component last year, while Reed's Ferry and Thornton's Ferry purchased the other component. In the 19-20 proposed budget, each school is completing the implementation process by purchasing the final components. Following this budget cycle, the purchasing of teaching materials would only be necessary if additional classrooms were added within a building. Question number 4, posed by Chairperson Barnes. Please provide an update on where you are with your current defined replacement plan, current defined furniture replacement plan. It is understood that as one plan expires, another will be developed based on the deterioration of furniture based on heavy usage. The team's response: historically, each school has worked to complete the phase-in of a 5-year furniture replacement plan. Having said this, over the years, in our attempt to be fiscally responsible, we have worked to modify these plans, which has resulted in the delay of the replacement process. To date, all schools have completed the replacement of all student desks and chairs, with the exception of 2 to 3 classrooms in 2 of the 3 elementary schools. Ongoing furniture plans will reflect the need to replace coat closets, student cubbies, tables, and bookcases. The next series of questions we received were from Vice Chair Schneider. Question number 1, additional materials for social emotional learning skills. Across all elementary grades, this new category exists, totaling over $30,000 across all 4 buildings. Can administration or principals provide details on what these items include and how will be integrated into the curriculum? Our response: we are purchasing a social emotional learning program that contains classroom teacher materials for each teacher in grades K through 5 across all elementary schools. The social emotional learning materials are curriculum-based and organized around the standards established by CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. The 5 skills and competency domains are relationship skills, responsible decision-making, self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness. Starting in 2019-2020 school year, we request budgetary supports to purchase these learning materials. Either Second Step or PATHS, which is promoting alternative thinking strategies, are the two curriculums that we are presently piloting. The amount we request is $40,000, which includes the cost of materials, professional development, and online access for parents and educators for additional materials, training, and suggested home-based tips and activities. Students will receive explicit instruction in social-emotional skills by their classroom teacher, and teachers will be able to integrate these skills into other content areas, especially the areas of reading and writing. By September 2019, our goal is to fully integrate social and emotional learning within our core instruction across grades K through 5. This will provide students with the competencies needed to be ready for college, needed to be college and career ready. Question number 2 from Vice Chair Schneider. I realize that each school has an ongoing furniture upgrade set of line items. Can the schools help to let us understand how the listed items were chosen and whether there are must-replace items in that list versus things that could be expended? Our response: our priority has been the replacement of classroom desks and chairs. Upon that level of replacement, we began with other non-essential but highly weathered furniture, such as bookcases and tables. Lastly, we will respond to 2 additional questions submitted by Board Member Schoenfeld. Question 1, relative to the math text account. The total for teacher materials has been substantially lower than in previous years. How has this savings been accomplished? Are there resources that will no longer be needed? Our response: after this budget cycle, all materials for teachers will have been purchased. The only additional teacher materials that would be needed would be for additional classrooms. This decrease is not due to the elimination of any resources. The second question we received from Board Member Schoenfeld: to help contextualize this expense in the guidance text account for those who may not have seen or heard previous board presentations on this topic in the past, please describe these materials and the ways they contribute to providing a safe and supportive learning environment. We would like to thank Board Member Schoenfeld for this question, and we believe that this question was answered in our response to Vice Chair Schneider's question. Based on Board Member Gualiumi's request, members of the District Mental Health Committee will present to the Merrimack School Board in the near future. At that time, the committee will review more details about the social emotional learning curricula and provide an update on the Merrimack system of care. I believe that we have answered all of the questions posed to the elementary team. We thank you for providing your questions to us in advance, and at this point in time, we're happy to answer any additional questions you have about the elementary budgets.
Are there any questions for the elementary team? Andy?
So obviously, excuse me, obviously a lot of our questions overlapped, as you can tell, because we sort of individually submitted them. So the information about the social emotional learning really helped, and we heard about it last night from the upper elementary school. My question around the furniture, there's a misspoken word in there. It used the word expended. What I was really looking for is, of the things that you have listed, which are the things that could potentially be deferred? I mean, I know we go through this every budget cycle where we say, you've got 17 things lined up. Do you need all 17, or could we pick 10 and delay 7? So obviously, maybe not for tonight, but as you look at this and as we go through our budget deliberations, if there are things that we could see savings on potentially to defer some things that maybe aren't as critical, that would be good to know. And I realize the miswording of that meant you couldn't prepare for what I was really asking, so I apologize for that.
No, certainly. I think, as always, we would take into consideration what the board's requesting of us and would confer as a leadership team.
Excellent. Cinda?
I just have more of a comment. After quite a few years on the budget committee, as well as now, I think 6 years on the school board, the same thing holds true. The elementary school budgets, they're always very well put together. I mean, every dollar is accounted for. A lot of times when the furniture is replaced, in my experience, it's been 40-year-old furniture. It's a testament, I think, to how well the items are taken care of, and the respect for the property in those schools. And it kind of blows my mind sometimes, particularly, I think I always remember that carpet at Reed's Ferry that was like 40-some years old in the library that was replaced. And so hopefully we're at a point now where, we're starting to get through some of these things that we're in desperate need, 7 or 8 years ago of being replaced. But I would once again thank you for the diligence you put forth into the budget, and for coming tonight.
And if I could add to that, I think the consistency as well. So when you look at how you work and collaborate, we don't see that one school gets what I would call better served over another with budget asks. So you've been very collaborative and able for us to take in everything. It makes it workable for us to take all of your schools in one bite, because you really are so consistent in the way that you operate your buildings. So I think that's a testament to no matter where you are in school, you're getting a top-notch opportunity for a great elementary experience. So thank you for that. Cinda.
And along that vein, and a number of other schools do this as well, is the way that you allocate for supplies for the students. It's very easy to follow. It's a number of student times the standard rate. I don't think that rate has increased, if I recall, in the 8 years that I've been involved. It's always been that same rate. You just have done the calculation based on the number of students in the district. And so I think that makes it very easy to follow and track as well.
Definitely. And while we have you here, Michelle, I know that you have, since our meeting last night and where we had some questions, have further information you can share on the NAEP assessment, which is the federal assessment for fourth graders with math. If you wouldn't mind, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. So I know some of the things that were discussed yesterday were the letter and whether or not there were 2 letters and could they be compiled. So thank you for your feedback, and we are looking at revisions for that. There is a survey that the students will take if parents provide permission. In the paperwork that you got yesterday, there's a list of links, and one of those links, or I believe it's in the paperwork you got, one of those links is to the survey so that parents directly can go and visit it. I will make sure that that's very clear, that link in the paperwork that goes home, as well as it'll be posted on the website, each of the school websites as well. All 3 schools, 4th grade, are participating in NAEP. 2 of the schools, Reed's and Thornton's, will be taking NAEP at the end of January, and our school has been, February 20th is the day that was designated for Master Cola. Were there any other questions or things you were wanting me to answer?
Are there any other questions? No, I think we're good. So thank you for the clarifications tonight. So if, with no other questions for the elementary school, going once, going twice, we will let you have the rest of your evening, and we look forward to a good rest of your year. So thank you for coming. We will let them clear out, and then we will invite to the table representatives for the Merrimack Middle School. So Principal Adam Carragher, welcome.
Thank you very much. Yep, there you go. First, I'd like to thank you for having me here tonight. It's always a privilege to be able to come and speak with the board and to share with the community. This year's middle school budget proposal for the school year 2019-2020 shows our continued commitment to our district logic model through attention to literacy, numeracy, technology, school climate and safety. Excuse me. This proposal does include a modification to our technology education and our family consumer science programs, as well as the replacement of 2 cafeteria tables, which are currently in their 14th year of service. As of course, our supply accounts are dependent upon per pupil expenditures and fluctuate depending on our projected enrollments. So we were in receipt of a number of questions from our board members.
I will actually proactively cut you off about the free and reduced lunch. That was answered by upper elementary and elementary, so I'll leave you off the hook on that part.
Very good.
You bet.
Very good. So the first question, as Chairperson Barnes just spoke about, was what out-of-pocket costs do students have for these outings? And are there funds available for those receiving free and reduced lunch? So there are expenditures for students related to these trips. We do have budgeted in the proposal as well as in this year's budget for the transportation costs for those, which can sometimes be significant. Depending on the trip, we have particularly a 7th grade Squam Lake trip and the 8th grade Lowell Mills trip. The cost per student is somewhere in the area of $10 to $12. Our objective, of course, is that we will have 100% of our students participate in these activities, and ultimately, regardless of whether or not they're able to pay, we generally are able to help through the generosity of staff members and community members. Moving on, I'll skip the other question about the free and reduced lunch there. So moving on, Chairperson Barnes asked about the math texts, saying that as others have budgeted for them, meaning math texts, who have the new math curriculum, how is it you do not have a need for any textbooks in the budget in the event of, say, lost or damaged textbooks? Ultimately, we base our need off of what we have as projections. The projection that we have, we're comfortable with the number of texts that we have available for students. Our staff members all have the appropriate teacher's editions at this time. In the situation of a lost or damaged text, generally we'll look for compensation from the student. Moving along to the next question, which would be provided by Vice Chair Schneider, related to furniture. I realize that each school has an ongoing furniture upgrade set of line items. Can the schools help to let us understand how the listed items were chosen and whether there are must-replace items in that list versus things that could be not expended?
Extended or
Extended.
delayed. Right, that's
Okay.
right. There you go.
Thank you. Obviously, we do our best to predict what furniture replacement potentially is needed. So, for example, in this year's budget, you will note that there are 2 cafeteria tables, and that is based off of the fact that over the past, I would say, year and a half, we're beginning to see our tables kind of approach that end of life, if you will, and some who have gone over the edge in terms of lifespan. So we're trying to budget for those responsibly so that ultimately there's not a point in time where we're looking to replace a significant number, but maybe by replacing a few here and there, and the good work of our maintenance department to keep the ones moving, keep the ones alive as long as they can, while at the same time providing a good spot for kids to sit and have lunch. So I welcome any questions or any explanations beyond that you might need.
Sure, Andy.
So just on that same vein, it's, as I mentioned to the elementary schools, it's always a challenge every budget year to look at the furniture and to find out what are the stuff that maintenance can't repair anymore. Or if there's a functional deficiency versus can we continue this, because that's, I guess I would much rather delay a furniture upgrade than a program or some other educational thing. So when we get into our budgetary discussions, there may be a question that pops back to you about what if we only replace one of the tables or something, could we get through? So, sort of just prepare for that if we get to that point.
Very good.
Cinda?
My question is either for you or Matt, and it's how does your budget compare from this year to last year, the middle school budget? It seems like a lot of the items were fairly flat. I didn't have a lot of questions, but I was curious if it decreased or if it,
Yeah, I ran the numbers on all the school budgets, and most of them are either flat or down. There's no significant increases or even any really increases in the budgets for them.
that might be something helpful going forward, I think, in future budget seasons is maybe, and maybe I missed it, if there's a summary of the each school and where it was.
There's a list.
Is it, did I miss it? Okay.
There's reports that we have built in the system that show each school, and that's what they use to manage their day-to-day. So Adam will run a report. He runs it just on his school. He'll look at it on a monthly basis or whenever, he has a need. So that's something that's not in the book. It's all run together, but we could put that at the end or wherever for each school
Or
so
for
you
each
could see.
section and just an
Yes.
overview,
Well,
that would help me.
There's
Yeah.
an example, the student services one. He does say the percent increase over the previous years,
Yes.
which is helpful to understand. So
Right.
even something as simple as that would, I think, address your question.
Okay.
I mean, it seemed that that it went down when I
Yes.
went line by line through the budget.
Correct.
So I didn't have any questions. We've reviewed those items before. But I appreciate all of your work on it.
But yeah, we can definitely, we enhance things all the time, and if that's a good enhancement for everybody, we'll absolutely do that. Okay? Yeah.
Marge?
Yeah, I just wanted to stress, because I think this is important for the board to know. I think I said it in the beginning, but I'll say it now. When we began the budget process, the leadership team was very aware of the board's budget message, which was to try and come as close to level funding as we could. So if you go in thinking that, then you're really about saying, what are my top priorities? And so if you just look at the middle school, we have 2 programs that needed significant renovation or updating, as Adam points out, the Family and Consumer Science and Technology Education. So that really took a prominence. But then if you look at the offset for the math, so math implementation really was in the last year, and so that kind of balanced off. And that's what we found when we would go and do budget hearings, is we had this budget balancing effect for each of the buildings. But I just want to say that they were very responsible too in putting the budget together, because they clearly heard the message. And had we not had such significant cost in health care, this would have definitely met the mark. I mean,
And then I would also say the middle school, including all of the schools over the last few years, have done a great job of explaining variances. So, I mean, that answers a lot of my questions when I'm looking at, what's the proposed amount versus, the current amount, and it's gone up or down. That's always going to be my question. Why has it gone up or down? And so I think that overall, all of the schools are explaining those variances really well, and that's very helpful.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Adam? Seeing none, the middle school is done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You as well. And then we will bring to the table the representatives from Merrimack High School. So I invite to the table our new principal, Sharon Putney. Welcome, and we hope it was an enjoyable first budget process for you. And assistant principals Rich Zampieri and Peter Bergeron. So welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Sharon Putney, principal of Merrimack High School, and presenting with me tonight are Rich Zampieri and Peter Bergeron, assistant principals. I will read part of the budget statement that we expressed some things that we wanted to highlight in the budget, and then I will read some of the questions that were presented to us from the board ahead of time. In the 2019-2020 Merrimack High School budget, you will find many line items that have been either reduced or level funded. Some of the reductions are due to one-time purchases in the previous budget, increased purchasing through online vendors, efforts to reduce paper consumption through online access to information. There are some proposed increases in the areas of athletics and math and necessary supports to provide differentiated instruction to meet the needs of our diverse learners. In athletics, the following is requested: additional funds to cover the cost of transportation to athletic practices, games, and matches held off-site, replacement of wrestling mats, replacement of football helmets and shoulder pads which are beyond repair or reconditioning, along with the purchase of football jerseys. Regarding additional equipment, the following items are requested. The Family and Consumer Science Department requests 2 Real Care Babies for their child development class, and the Math Department requests 30 laptops with a cart and 30 classroom graphing calculators to support the implementation of a new district curriculum. I will now review some of the questions that were sent to us, beginning with questions from Shannon Barnes, the chair. And the first question was, as band travel is part of a graded class, why is this listed as a co-curricular expense, $6,500? This is money earmarked for extracurricular clubs. And Pete Bergeron is going to address that question.
So the band lives in, if we would say, both two worlds. Portion of the transportation cost are earned co-curricular events, and what I mean by that is that some of them are related to class and some are related to co-curricular. For example, some of the members of the band travel to all state competitions, solo and ensemble performances, jazz, all state. And every other year we compete in all Eastern competitions. So these competitions, when our band students go to these events, those are not graded events. They are invited to those events due to their performances and competitions, and they go on to the next level. For example, for this year, for all Eastern, we have 5 students going, which is unusual. We may have one, or like the last 2 years ago, we had 2 students. So that certainly is a cost. So that goes into co-curricular. And as I said, when we go to the all-state or jazz band competition, those are not graded. Hopefully that answered your question.
It did. Thank you, Peter.
The next question, please advise as to how often the uniforms of athletic teams are purchased. I have heard comments from parents that some are in gross condition when given to the students for the season. And again, Pete Bergeron's going to address that.
So, being a former athletic director and coach, I think the term, I think that, uniforms, it's a relative, when they say it's gross, to one coach or one parent, it might be, oh, my God, they're in terrible shape, and others, they might say they're fine. But in speaking with Mike Susi, our athletic director, we are on a 4 or 5 year rotation. Some of the jerseys, uniforms are sent out to get stitched, reconditioned, so to speak. Last year, for example, we had new track uniforms were purchased along with freshman basketball jerseys, unified volleyball shirts, and JV softball jersey. This year, we are purchasing new golf and bowling shirts, boys basketball uniforms, and we're in the process of ordering boys and girls tennis shirts, and also girls lacrosse uniforms. We do use gate receipts, but some of the costs of the uniforms are, like for example, we're asking for the football jerseys to be purchased, and we've put that off, and we definitely need them. In using the gate receipts, normally we have 5 home games. This year, we only had 4 home games, 4 football home games. We had a playoff football game, but we don't see any of that money that goes to the state. And we also charge for basketball games. So the gate receipts do help, but when we have a big the one-time purchase of in football largest numbers, that's a cost.
And the third question from Shannon Barnes, please provide the cost of this line item should the article for a turf field pass? And the line item was the athletics practice transportation item. So Pete.
So, once again, in working with Mike Susi, he put together a handout, and Mrs. Chaffrey, she has it. She's going to give you that handout to the board members. Certainly having the turf field will help. If you look on one side, it lists without the turf field, it's 63,000 or almost 64,000. With the field, that takes care of some of the fall events, for the boys and girls soccer's and practices and games. And then, of course, having the turf field would certainly help in the spring for lacrosse. So that there is a savings there, but still, we will incur a cost because the turf field won't solve all the problems.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the questions from Andy Schneider, Vice Chair. This has to do with furniture upgrades.
Remember the changed word at the end of my question.
Extended, I believe. I realize that each school has an ongoing furniture upgrade set of line items. Can the school help to let us understand how the listed items were chosen and whether there are must-replace items in the list versus things that could be done without or, yes?
So our must-replace items, very much somewhat like the elementary school. You heard Mr. Carragher talk about the cafeteria tables at the middle school. So we've been purchasing a CAF table or 2 CAF tables every year. We put it off last year. I was able to talk to Tom Dusso, and we were able to, as Mr. Carragher pointed out, the good work in the maintenance department. They were able to take care of one of these tables. But this year we're asking for a cafeteria table. Every year we ask for student chairs because, for example, we have 81 home rooms. That's just 81 home rooms. So we have a lot of student chairs. We have a lot of we're asking for student desk. Last year, in putting off the CAF table, we purchased, and we are in great need of art tables. So this year we're asking for art tables. We're asking for a pottery table. Of those items I just mentioned, if any one of those items that we could possibly put off would be a pottery table. Though our pottery tables are pretty old, and once again, our maintenance department, they do their very best to keep them squared away and ready for our students and teachers.
The next question, technology budget.
You don't need to answer that one because.
Oh, you feel like you're all set?
Well, the question was really, I saw the need in the high school, but I was trying to find out whether it was always also covered in the technology budget. So when Nancy Rose was here last night,
Yep.
we sort of went through it. So she
Okay,
explained
perfect.
the need for why the high school needed them and why it's covered in that school versus from her middle budget. So.
Thank you, Nancy.
So not
All
to
right.
take your thunder, Rich, away, but I think I'm cool because it was explained that you need these for the new math program to help, both for the calculators as well as the laptop carts, and it's covered separate because of the way that she accounts for things and puts certain things in the school, so.
All right, perfect. Then we're going to move on to the questions that Cinda Guadliumi had. And the first question is, please provide detail regarding the fine art academic enrichment line item. This line item has to do with some in-school enrichment field trips. And they usually try to have groups come into the school because then it doesn't take as much time away and the students might participate for one period. Mrs. Mandra gets some input from individual departments about what they would like to see, and they try to have a variety over the course of several years. This year, they're bringing in the theater group Shakespeare Now, who will be performing a Shakespeare production, and they're going to also be hosting a group called Jazzberry Jam by drummer Jay Cook from Vermont, and they're going to be doing 2 performances in March with that performing group. Last year, they hosted Poetry Alive. So it's different. They try to mix it up a little bit, but it's always kind of fine arts related. The next question, the line item states the increase is due to the cost of a Retopia program. That's the reading supplies. And please tell us more about this program. And Rich is going to address that.
Okay. Retopia is an online reading program that can be differentiated and reach the varying grade level abilities of our students with the most intensive reading needs. It can be individually applied, and it's multisensory type of program.
The next question,
Let me finish with the programming, or I'm sorry.
no, that was just this one.
Utopia,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Retopia, that's okay.
Utopia.
Please tell us more about the marketing ed new text and the introduction to business course. I'm going to take the first part of that and have Rich talk about that first part of that question.
Intro to Business is a new course that is lined up with Nashua Community College. We run a Running Start curriculum with that school. The new text is aligned and is actually the text that is used by NCC for that very class. And there is also an online component for resources for the teacher and the students.
And the other part of that is, please tell us more about the new text for Computer Programming 1. And that's, Pete's going to talk about.
Because we have a variety of learners, we need to provide differentiated learning opportunities. This is a comprehensive class in conjunction with lectures and demonstrations. This textbook is needed because for the 1920 school year, the students will be learning a new programming language. And in this way, reaching all learners by using this book. They use Java, and then they want to start using Python programming. So they can use that for both desktop and web application.
The next question, please tell us about the items included in this budget item. It's phys ed health additional equipment. I don't recall why we had zero budgeted last year, but some more information regarding these items for 1920 would be helpful.
So Amy Larkin-Perez, she's our department head for phys ed and health. She really feels they need these items this year to support the phys ed curriculum. For example, we would like heart rate monitors, kettleballs, and push-pull sled, which will enhance our personal training and lifetime wellness classes. The other items are games that will be used in our PE1 and PE2 classes that emphasize basic fundamental skills, strategies, and officiating.
And the next question, please tell us for what the $4,000 is expected to be allocated, and that's in the tech ed additional equipment line item.
So that's for the $4,000 is for a wood lathe that is replacing an antiquated wood lathe from 1975. So we are in need of replacing that. Yes.
Can we bequeath it to Andy when you put it out of commission?
But he used it.
He probably
Yeah.
did use it, yes.
And we do have one additional question from Naomi Schoenfeld. And her question had to do with the math additional equipment. Will this cart be limited in its use to math or leverage more widely? Is there a reason the purchase is here rather than in the technology library media budget?
And I asked the math department chair that exact question, and he was certainly not limited only to the math, but it certainly would be dedicated for their new curriculum and primarily used by the math department. And as noted earlier in our discussion, it's technology specifically targeted for the new curriculum and to work in conjunction with some of the new higher level calculators as well.
So,
And,
oops, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, and I think Nancy kind of explained why it was in our budget versus in the library media budget.
Yeah, we grilled her last night. Yeah, she was not feeling well.
So at this point, we'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you have about the high school budget.
Excellent. Are there any other questions for high school? Well, thank you very much. I hope it was a smooth first year process for you. Good thing you didn't take over the maintenance job. That would have been a tougher one this year. But, but on that note, we do thank you for your time, and we look forward to the rest of your school year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So we are going on to the district-wide budget, and so I will, at this point, turn it over to the team to my left.
Thank you, and I'm going to ask Matt to start out by talking in terms of what our most significant expenditures are. And then when he finishes doing that summary, then we'll come back and review the questions. So Matt?
Yes, thank you. The most significant items in our budget really are the most significant items from a cost increase standpoint in the budget overall. The increase right now that we're looking at is 2.11% overall. That's an increase of $1.6 million. And in the district portion of the budget, there is 5 accounts that add up to $1.7 million of an increase. The first one is health insurance. We all know that that went up. Well, the guaranteed maximum rate is 13.7. We don't anticipate that to come in at a lesser amount, so the increase there is $1.4 million. Dental insurance went up 2.3%. That's $108,000. The New Hampshire retirement for professional staff, it went up a 2.5% increase, and it's now 17.8% of wages for professional staff, teachers, and that adds $95,000. Years ago, just to kind of give it a historical perspective, the state of New Hampshire used to pick up, I think, 6 or 7% of that number. So our number was much lower. Then they just decided not to do that anymore, and they pushed it all down to the lower levels, the local communities. When you look at our rates, you compare them to police and fire. I think police and fire could be upwards of 25-27% of salary now. So it's a burdensome cost that we have to bear, and there's no relief from the state. But hopefully in the near future, the plan as it's managed, and I think you had somebody from New Hampshire Retirement come before you and speak to this, right? And would become a little more credible. The program is in decent shape, but it needs to be in better shape. So hopefully the management will get to that point, and we won't be faced with such a large portion of our budget towards New Hampshire retirement. The last piece is transportation, around $80,000. That's a 3.5% contractual increase, and I believe there's 2 more years to go on this contract with STA. It was a 5-year contract, so we'll either ask the board if they want to renegotiate sometime before the end of the contract and do an extension like we did last time. When we did that, the next year was a 0% increase, and then they took it to 3.25%, 3.25%, 3.5%, 3.5% in the last ones. So, or go out to bid. As the years have gone by, there's less and less competition, so there'd only be First Student, who we had, and STA, who has definitely made its presence known here in the community with the construction and renovation of their new facilities right up the road from here. And so those all total up to $1.7 million, and that's basically all in the district budget and is the majority of the increase of the bottom line of the entire budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions that we have written, okay? I believe
The first one?
I have the first one. This is from Shannon Barnes. How many students are we currently transporting to charter schools, realizing we are required to bus those charter schools located in Merrimack? Which schools are getting students bused to them? We have a charter school, and we are legally obligated to provide transportation to charter schools and any other private schools in the area. The charter school that we are providing transportation to is Gate City Charter School. It's down by the YMCA on, I forget the name. Yeah, thank you, Henry Clay Drive. And we have approximately 20 students on the bus that take the bus, so we give them one bus. It covers the entire town. It's around 20. It can fluctuate a little bit, but that seems to be the average number.
The second question from Chair Barnes is, with a noted increase in legal services required beyond the budget in this current budget year, should we consider increasing this item to better reflect usage of legal services? Our response would be no. Please break out how much was associated with the Bevel case, as it was an unprecedented event for the district, which is unlikely to recur. The amount expended in 17-18 was $71,900.95. Of that amount, $20,917 was expended on the Bevel case. And so when we did our calculations, we feel that $50,000 is an appropriate amount.
Thank you.
Yep. This is another question from Chairman Barnes. Among the $20,000 in contracted services funding, is any of this line item associated with HB 1612 amendment to RSA 189:66, as noted in the technology budget? The $20,000 is to take care of the provisions of that RSA and the change in the law. So that would be software and/or any other items that we need in order to track and manage and keep track of everything that we use in the district, and to be compliant with that particular statute.
Okay, so in addition to the expenses that Nancy Rose laid out for us last night, there's an additional $20,000 for district-wide technology initiatives. That's an unfunded mandate from the state.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Here's another case of great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Board Member Cinda Gualiumi. I know we were required to provide this for charter schools, transportation, and students in our district. I'm curious how many students the bus transportation costs of 38,820 supports. And I think I answered that in the last question inadvertently. It is around 20 students on any given day that we transport, and that's one bus that covers the entire community, and we are legally obligated to do that. We get kind of a cut rate on a bus, because usually a bus doing a regular route is around $55,000, so they charge us this, and they're out there every day. So that's the arrangement we made.
Last question comes from Board Member Schoenfeld. I'd like to know more about the inclusion of the Student Wellness Coordinator on the cut list. How will this affect students, staff, faculty, administration, and the district's ability to support student well-being? The board may recall that several years ago, when the team first approached the board about their work, they said that they were going to enter a period of study, and that until they completed that study, they weren't prepared to make any recommendations about personnel or material That was about 4 years ago now, and so it is now coming to the committee's attention and the leadership team that a student wellness coordinator would be a good additional position to help us achieve our goals of providing supports to students. So our goal ultimately is to hire somebody. We also were mindful of the board's request for a level funded budget. And so in the interim, we have taken care of this through a contracted service. And there's a precedent for that. In the past, we had our district, our high school 504 coordinator initially be working with us through a contracted service, and then that became part of the district operating budget. And so we are prepared to follow that same pattern, and perhaps next year we will bring this request back, but there will be no loss of support to students during this process.
Are there any other questions at the high school? Cinda? I'm sorry, district. High school left. They're home.
Just to follow up on the wellness coordinator position, do we happen to have job descriptions for that position as well as the benefits coordinator position that you could share with the board?
We have both, and so we'll just bring that on Monday night. Would that be
That would be
appropriate?
fine, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the district-wide budget? I would love another data point if we have it, and that is, do we know how many students in general are enrolled in charter schools? That would normally be brought to Merrimack High School, and the reason I ask that is when we look at John Fabrizio's data, where we do have 7 students that are enrolled in charter schools that are based, Merrimack-based students, I'd like to know what the proportion is for what you would call mainstream versus students in need of student services, and if it's proportionate to what the district as a whole operates at.
So I don't have that number in my head.
I was thinking Monday. This definitely on the spot.
But
question.
we do have it, and we'll be happy to bring it on Monday.
That would be great. Oh, Cinda.
Along the same lines, it would be helpful to see maybe the last 5 years of what those numbers look like, just to see how we're trending. That would be of interest to me.
And I can just clarify, the last 5 years of numbers related to students who are participating, who are enrolled in charter schools. Okay.
And
It would be any charter schools, not just Gate City.
right. So, and to that end, if we are going to do the 5-year trend, if we can do the 5-year trend of those that would be receiving supports through special services, so we can look at that proportion. So thank you for that. Discussion opened up some questions. So on to that, it's on to item number 5, which is budget discussion. This is the part where we've basically heard everything other than the warrant articles, which we'll be discussing at our board meeting on the 14th, which is a week from yesterday, so this coming Monday. And with that, I know we've been through a lot of data. We've spent a number of weeks reviewing that data, and consideration of cut amounts is usually where we're at this point. So what is the board's thoughts? I have thoughts. I always have thoughts. But what is the board's thoughts on a cut amount that we would want to consider asking for administration to work on? Okay, I was going to say, go ahead.
Well, I don't have the dollar in front of me, but I know that right now the proposed operating budget is higher than the default budget,
About $411,000.
$411,000. It would be good to understand what it would take, what impacts would have to have the operating budget be at or below the default budget.
I agree with that. And if I could add to that point, and I really think as a board, we've been historically consistent that we don't use staff to
Right.
get to a number, that staff cuts are only in place when the enrollment doesn't support the position. So that's not something I would look at as an area for consideration.
Right, and I would concur with that as well. I mean, we don't want to affect programs, staffing, things that deal with the education of the students. But there's a lot of things in the budget that are related to infrastructure, maintenance, other things like that. I asked questions about furniture. I know it's small amounts, but small amounts where we could delay things and not jeopardize the integrity or function of something. Or safety, right, thanks. That's all important to do, so I know it's interesting because we used to, when we would do budgets, develop a cut list through the process. Now you come in with a cut list at the beginning to say what you wanted to have, but you didn't put in the budget that's presented, and we're sort of asking you to slice a little deeper based on it to get to level funded. Just as a comment, I mean, Matt's comment earlier is around more than the increase in the budget is things that we're obligated to do based on healthcare costs, New Hampshire retirement, other things that are contractually obligated, is really frustrating as a school board member because any opportunity that we would have to try to trim and be able to reduce the budget is out of our hands, which means we have to look into things that are cut closer to the bone. So you guys always do a really good job of looking at things that we can do without affecting student access and things like that. I think that overall, the direction the district's taking around academics, improving around the math curriculum and other things around reading and some of the social emotional things we've heard, it's helping to improve an already quality level education that we've got in the programs. But realistically, we have budget issues that we have to deal with, and asking you to do this to get down to at or below the default budget is something that I think we have to understand what it means. So.
And on that note, I know we're going to be reconvening on Monday for the warrant articles. In addition to that, we were discussing, I know Tom Tussaud came up specifically, so he's already, picking out what he's going to wear, whatever. But anyone else that we want to bring back to the table? So, are there any other department heads that we, based on our deliberations, we have further questions? Yes.
So it's not necessarily department heads yet, but what I wanted to tell you is, as far as Tom is concerned, one of the things that we talked about this morning when we had a session is that we want to do a more formal presentation about roofing and specifically about types of roofs, choices made, how we go about the process and so on, because we think that might be beneficial to all concerned. We do that on an annual basis, and so I think we just know it and haven't shared maybe as much about it, and we think given that that's come up in discussion, that might be beneficial.
I think that'd be welcome. Cinda?
And along the same line, I'm wondering if it's a good topic for our communications committee efforts of the Facebook page to send out some information along.
And
those lines.
that, believe it or not, is in fact our first presentation up already. Yes. So this was just a part of our morning as well. So I think Matt will talk about something underway. We have food service lined up, and so the next thing will be maintenance. So we'll probably take from what we share with you on Monday and then bloom it a bit, but go, please.
Yeah, it's part of our communication plan. I went to the, that Mark had laid out, and we're a tad behind, but it got done. We're new to this multimedia kind of thing and getting it online and whatnot. I went and I saw Justin at the TV studio a couple of weeks ago. Excellent person to work with. Professional, knows what he's doing, made me look good. The sound was great. I look 20 years younger on TV. It's amazing. No, I'm only kidding. So you will be the judge of that. And I'm looking at all the gray hair going, oh my gosh, I wish these lights weren't as bright. But I took the PowerPoint and I did a narration, I did an introduction, and I did commentary throughout. It ran around 15 minutes. Nick LaValle has published it on the educational channel. It's running, I think, maybe 10 o'clock tomorrow morning or something like that, and then it's going to vary its time. It's been posted to YouTube as a mechanism to store it, but on our website, there is a link to the video from our website. And on our Facebook page, the video after Marge and Mark took a look at it and said it was good to go. It's been uploaded to the Merrimack School District Facebook page, which is, you can Google it and find it at Merrimack Schools, and it should come right up. So that's one of the first things. So far, I have 2 likes on that. I need, where's the camera? I need more likes on the video on the Facebook page, so please be kind. Thank you. Yes, and then we'll be doing a little piece on food service, a little Q&A. Mark and I are working on that too with Dave Zicki, and so we'll put that together. We'll try and make it somewhat entertaining as opposed to just texts. You know, maybe we'll put some pictures in there. It's kind of tough, you know, when you're looking at doing this, to try and make it just not wordy, dry, whatever. So that's
So
what we're working on.
I think it will be important for you to take a look at these and give us feedback, because what we're attempting to do is make each segment a bit different. So it won't, it'll be different persons, some interviews, some just Q&A. So we're really experimenting, but it would be helpful, it would be beneficial to give feedback. So maybe on Monday, that could be something that you would weigh in, because we should have two pieces up.
Right.
The big overview and the food service piece, so that would
And
be
then-
helpful.
Excellent. We'd
Yeah.
love to.
And maintenance is
And then-
third. So to the point that you're making, so we are trying to say, in this budget, what are the most significant items? And roofing obviously is one. And I think we want to also focus on heat and electricity, because those 3 areas are the big parts of the maintenance budget.
So again, I'd like to meet with Justin, bring Tom with me, and perhaps we do like a little interview format, see how that runs. Justin has some great suggestions. Tom still has, years ago, he gave the board a presentation and the planning board a presentation when we made the switch from a rubber membrane roof, which is kind of like your swimming pool liner that is very popular, that has the 10 to 12 year warranty. The tarp, and it's not a tarp, but and then to a built-up roof, which is several layers. So he still I believe he still has those. If not, he will get them, and then we could explain to people what the difference is and how they wear over time, and how come this one costs more than this one, but this one gives you a 40-year warranty versus this one gives you 10 to 12 years. So that would be an episode where Tom will definitely be picking out his outfit for that one. And
He has a great sweater collection. He'll be fine.
I know he does,
He really
doesn't he? Yeah. And so we'll be able to do that, and I'm looking forward to it myself. So
Definitely. Andy.
So 2 things. You asked the question about prepare for the next one. So the next meeting, right? So from a maintenance perspective, you talked about roofs, bringing Tom in to talk about. One of the other things that was brought up the other night by one of the residents is, do we plan for this stuff? Are we doing things willy-nilly, or do we plan for this? And I know that the boiler replacement, the switchgear replacement, it would be good to talk about sort of the Honeywell research that was done by Honeywell that identified some of these, and how it fits into the planning that we do to make sure that we reinforce the public that what we do is it's not always reactive. It's part of a plan to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So that sort of dimension to the discussion would be good.
And I would just say, just so you know, and today I spent probably 25 minutes speaking with the party who had questions and so on. So I've already had a one-on-one, and I think I talked about Honeywell, and so I think we could talk more about that.
Yep, that would
as
help.
well.
But, and the other piece, though, too, is one of the topics I think is going to come up is around the transportation item for offsite practices and things like that. Because as we saw tonight, if the turf field, because the turf field is going to be a petition warrant article, most likely based on our presentation, that could have an impact on part of that budget, but it was only about a third of the budget that was proposed that would be affected. There's still nearly $40,000 that's there for transportation. So if the athletic, I don't know if it makes sense, but I would like to be able to ask questions around the transportation to all the other things that have traditionally forever, like hockey and bowling and other things.
So are you wanting the athletic director?
I'm thinking, because we don't need the whole high school, but really the athletic director. The parents directed, and I know that Cinda as well as Brandy had concerns about transportation, but there's parents that are there too. But at the end of the day, all these are under the sort of the auspice of the athletic director, and sort of understanding his view on it. Some of the changes that occur, we heard a lot of that transportation at the last minute had to be changed because of something. Do any of the things that we're planning in that transportation fall into that area? And we also know that there was a risk that we may not get a bus driver to be able to do some of this, even if we budget the money. So I'd like that to be part of our discussion when we do it. And having the athletic director there would be a good person to have there. Maybe preparing information through Matt and the transportation coordinator around the reliability or lack thereof of buses and drivers. So if we budget it, is it money we won't be able to spend because they wouldn't be able to do it? That would be good to have that data too, because it's all sort of wound around the same question.
Okay, Cinda.
I just had one other topic, kind of going back to those communications, kind of snippets for taxpayers, really. And one of those would be just understanding the tax rate and how that impacts. It sounds really simple, but I think that I get a lot of questions from people frequently about the tax rate, how is it calculated, and sometimes when people have an assessment and their property goes up, then their taxes go up, but it's not always directly relating to our budget. So maybe that's a good joint session to have with the town council, or maybe a collaborative effort with the assessing department or something.
Well, there's a couple of parts to setting a tax rate. And having worked on the town side for 8-9 years, I kind of am very familiar with how it's done. There's a couple of components, how much money you raising by appropriations, how much revenue do you have to offset those appropriations, and sometimes, more importantly, when you have a shift in the way real estate is valued. There was a period here in Merrimack and in other communities where the value of condominiums was decreasing significantly, which put more value on the single-family homes and the businesses. So there was a shift in the burden. So even if everything else was equal, the condo owner would pay less, and the single-family homeowner would pay more, even if you didn't raise any more money or have less revenue. So there's a lot of things at play. Appropriations, absolutely, that's like the number one, but sometimes valuation, which I think is going to be steady into the future, is another one too.
But I think that's a real helpful thing for our constituents and citizens in this area. Not everyone understands that, and it certainly has taken me a while to understand how that works as well. So I feel like that would be really valuable, for around the budget season, whether we do it this year or it's an idea for the future. I feel like that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would definitely
Thank you.
Okay, and I think the only other thing that, as we're vetting all of this at the end of the day, that we always talked about taking a good look at the voter's guide and seeing what kind of a resource it is. And again, if there's ever the opportunity to collaborate with the town to have a comprehensive voter's guide, if that makes sense, just having a quick conversation. Those are things that have come up at the table. So as we're preparing for the election, then and I can reach out to Eileen Cabanel if that would be preferred, and see what her thoughts and maybe her board's thoughts would be. So absolutely, I'll reach out to Chair Rothaus as well. So those are, I think, the budget hit list for tonight. So with that, are there any other questions or comments for the budget as we discussed it? Seeing none, we will go on to item number 6, which is public comments on agenda items. And we are losing our last member of the public, so so no pressure. So with that, I will entertain the motion to adjourn. Made by Andy, seconded by Cinda. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you and good night.